the future. Glaciers are in retreat, so what will happen to streams and rivers? Taking a trip to Mars without leaving home. And the very peculiar genes of a very peculiar animal. Glaciologists in France have been watching in alarm as their glaciers recede. Researchers from Grenoble's Glaciology and Environmental Geophysics Laboratory regularly visit 5 glaciers in the French Alps. Around the world, the alpine ice pack is diminishing. Glaciologist Christian Vincent and his team heads out several times a year to record how much snow has melted over the summer and how much has fallen during the winter. Each spring, the team records the winter snowfall at the Glacier du Telafre and the Glacier de la Chaux, which flow into the Mer de Glace, France's largest glacier. They gather samples by boring into the snow at various points along the glaciers. The Mer de Glace is located on the northern slopes of the Mont Blanc. These observations have been made for the past 50 years, building up a clear picture of the evolution of climate.
Nous faisons des carottages sur différents sites du glacier.
We are coring at different sites on the glacier. We take a sample. We core always in the same place, which is very important for making comparisons over time. This coring enables us to measure the height of snow accumulated.
Various measurements are recorded so the scientists can later determine the glacier's mass balance. The shrinking of glaciers is being seen around the world, and if it continues, important rivers will become subject to wild fluctuations in their flows. This will have a devastating impact on vast populations that rely on glacially fed rivers like the Ganges and the Yangtze. The circumference, length, and the weight of the core are measured. Then the snow's density can be calculated. From the density, the team can determine the snow depth and water depth to find out the glacier's mass. The broader scientific establishment pays attention to these observations as they provide another piece in the pattern of global indicators pointing to climate change.
Our
glacial research interests the scientific community a great deal because of climate change. There are a lot of questions on climate change. Is it due to natural causes or because of man's influence? Glaciers are interesting for a number of reasons. Firstly, because they are far from urban sources of pollution and are witnesses of climate change. Very good witnesses.
In March 2008, the United Nations Environment Programme published a study which found that glaciers are shrinking at record rates. Scientists measuring the health of almost 30 glaciers around the world found that ice loss reached record levels in 2006, and many could disappear within decades.
Les glaciers sont intéressants pour l'opinion publique et pour la prise de conscience de l'opinion publique.
Glaciers are interesting for the public and for making the public aware of global warming.
Est très visible. C'est visible à l'œil nu.
Glacial retreat is very visible to the naked eye for those who come to the mountains from time to time, and we can also see it clearly by comparing photographs taken at different times and can see the glacier's retreat very clearly.
The Mer de Glace was once clearly visible from the ski resort of Chamonix, but these days it can barely be seen from below. On average, glaciers around the world shrank by 1.5 metres in 2006, the most recent year for which global data is available. The The snow that accumulates on mountain ranges over the winter gradually melts during the warmer months, providing rivers with a steady flow of water, and glaciers play an important part in this hydrological cycle. But around the world, this cycle is being disrupted in different ways. In southern Australia, drought conditions have been prevalent for more than a decade. The city of Orange in New South Wales has come up with a new water conservation measure. Stormwater from the city's streets will be diverted and processed to boost falling dam levels. A weir will be built across a nearby creek, and when flows reach a certain level, the water will be pumped into a treatment facility, then transferred to the city's dam. But farmers downstream are concerned about the proposals. Apple grower Ian Pearce relies on pumping water from the creek during dry weather and is afraid there may not be enough left for irrigation under the new plans.
Oh, well, that'd be pretty catastrophic. We've been very reliant on that water in the last, particularly last 4 to 5 years when we've had a series of dry years, and we have used the our licence to pump from the creek to irrigate our fruit trees during those dry periods.
The authorities insist that those using the creek for farming have nothing to worry about. With dams across the area at only 40% of capacity or below, there is only enough water to last for another 18 months if things continue as they are. The extra water is expected to supply 6,000 homes per year. Prominent search engine company Google recently launched Google Mars as a feature of its latest Google Earth 5.0. The Martian update has been compiled in collaboration with NASA's Ames Research Centre. The space agency is providing live from Mars pictures from cameras aboard the Odyssey spacecraft and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. Access Mars by clicking on the planet icon in the Google Earth toolbar. There's a historical maps layer that shows how our knowledge of Mars has developed. Giovanni Schiaparelli drew these antique maps of Mars around 1890. They were compiled painstakingly through the telescope at the Brera Observatory. It was Schiaparelli who originally recorded a network of lines that he called canali, meaning channels, though it was often mistranslated as canals. Later, thanks to the observations of another Italian astronomer, Vincenzo Cerulli, it was realized that the canals were simply optical illusions. As observations of the red planet moved from Earth-based telescopes to cameras carried by space probes, our view of Mars became clearer. Now with Google Mars, we can view pictures from various landers and trace the paths of rovers that still move across the surface of the planet. In 2004, NASA's Mars exploration rover, Opportunity, landed near a small crater on the Meridiani Planum, and it's still sending back pictures and useful data. Recently, interest in Mars gained pace when the Phoenix lander touched down in the planet's northern polar region. Equipped with a robotic arm to gather soil samples for analysis, the lander has 3 different onboard analyzers. After more than 1 month on the surface, the first of the 8 tiny ovens was filled with a soil sample, but no water was detected. Because the sample had been exposed for several days, it was thought that any water present could have been lost through sublimation. The ground staff gave instructions for the testing of another sample. The instrument is a combination of a high-temperature furnace with a mass spectrometer. There are 8 ovens, each able to analyse just 1 sample. It confirmed that there was water present. To measure dust and ice particles suspended in the atmosphere, a vertically pointed laser was deployed. It indicated well-mixed dust in the lower levels of the atmosphere. As much of this newly learned information as possible is available through the Google facility, but the most popular feature allows the user to browse the surface of Mars. For the newest imagery available from Mars, go to the Live from Mars layer. high-resolution images are accessible within hours of them being downloaded from currently orbiting spacecraft. Play the tour to orbit the planet and see pictures being taken by the Mars Odyssey team. The band beneath the orbiter that is currently being photographed is graphically represented. Users can fly along with Odyssey, as well as the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and locations near the equator of the two operational Mars exploration rovers are clearly indicated. Users can read articles linked to the planet's more prominent features, such as the Valles Marineris and Olympus Mons. The next major mission to Mars aims at landing a car-sized rover, tentatively known as the Mars Science Laboratory. It will be powered not by solar panels, but by a radioisotope thermoelectric generator that should keep it going under all conditions for around 2 years. As well as navigation and hazard detection cameras, the new rover will have 2 high-quality cameras capable of capturing stereoscopic and moving images. Genetic researchers in Australia, working in conjunction with colleagues in Belgium, have discovered an area on one of the X chromosomes that is connected to diminished brain function. Similar problems can come about through a lack of oxygen at birth and damaged DNA. But when the problem is genetic, scientists estimate that in about 30% of patients, a defect in the X chromosome is the trigger. Using specialised molecular technology, scientists studied the genes of some 300 families, where the condition had been passed on from generation to generation.
We believe this research is very important because it identifies a novel mechanism leading to a relatively mild to moderate form of intellectual disability, which is the information which can be used by the families.
They found that in 6 of the families studied, a certain part of the X chromosome had been duplicated and contained higher than normal protein levels. They have called the condition X-linked mental retardation.
The girls who carry the mutation on the X chromosome have 50% chance of having an affected boy. It means 1 out of 2 boys will be affected in families.
People can have a simple blood test to see if they are carriers, and the discovery could lead to new treatments which might be able to turn the affected genes off. The genetic discovery is an important breakthrough.
It brings a conclusion for these families about the definitive cause of the problem.
Other conditions, including haemophilia, autism and muscular dystrophy, have also been traced to the X chromosome. Mental retardation affects 1 to 3% of the world's population. The platypus is one of only 2 egg-laying mammals, so scientists have been keen to map the animal's genome. The platypus is classed as a mammal because it has fur and feeds its young with milk. But it also has bird and reptile features. It lays eggs, has a duck-like bill and webbed feet. More than 100 scientists from the United States, Australia, Japan and other nations took part in mapping the genome, using DNA collected from a female platypus named Glennie. Another peculiar thing about the platypus is the male's venomous heel spurs. The venom contains proteins similar to those found in snakes. The platypus is a monotreme, a distinct category of mammals that includes only one other animal, the echidna, also native to Australia. Professor Jenny Graves from the Australian National University says the platypus genome has some singular traits.
Well, what we found is that the genome, just like the animal, is an amazing amalgam of reptilian and mammal characteristics with quite a few unique platypus characteristics as well.
Scientists recently published the genetic makeup of the Australian animal in the scientific journal Nature. The research could help explain how mammals evolved from reptiles millions of years ago.
We expected that the platypus, like all other mammals, would have an X and a Y chromosome, and the Y chromosome would have a gene called SRY that is the gene that makes you male. But we couldn't find SRY, and the reason for that is it's not there. And what we found to our amazement is the sex chromosomes in a platypus are like the sex chromosomes of a bird, and so they work in a completely different way.
The research suggests that milk production emerged 165 million years ago, a long time before the ability to give birth to live young. The platypus hatches without an immune system, and scientists conducting the research think the animal's snake-like proteins may help the young survive infection. This venom is composed of at least 19 different proteins.
We're hoping that these proteins might be very useful for developing antibiotics to treat human diseases.
Scientists believe mammals evolved from reptiles, and the animals that became platypuses and those that became humans shared an evolutionary path until about 165 million years ago, when the platypus branched off. Visitors flocked around the electric cars displayed at a recent show in Tokyo. The struggling car industry is in need of a new direction, and interest in electric vehicles provides car makers with a ray of hope. Durasole, an Italian electric model, is already on the road, and over 2,000 cars have been sold worldwide. The two-seater car runs for 100 kilometres after being charged overnight at a standard domestic power outlet. So far, the biggest drawback with electric vehicles is the limited range available from the still expensive battery packs. A Durasole costs about $26,000 US. Major industry giants like Toyota, Nissan and Mitsubishi are already developing electric cars, and some of them will go on sale this year. The C-Coms is a world first in electric car design. It doesn't have batteries, but a series of capacitors. It can run for 20 minutes at 50 kilometers per hour after a 30-second charge. The developers feel that the capacitor system can be further refined to deliver far better performance. Industry leaders believe that people will buy electric vehicles if the price comes down, but it's essential for governments to encourage the technology through tighter emission standards and with buyer incentive programs. Honda's new zero-emission hydrogen fuel cell car, the FXC Clarity, is in production. For more than 10 years, the company has been refining the fuel cell vehicle. Honda believes there is no future for the car industry if it does not address environmental issues. The cars are available for lease in parts of the world where there is a hydrogen supply infrastructure. Car design experts are enthusiastic about the new vehicle, not just because it produces no emissions, but because the new technology unlocks a range of new design options. According to the manufacturers, the Clarity is twice as energy efficient as the petrol-electric hybrid and 3 times that of a standard gasoline-powered car. John Spallino from California is leasing one of the vehicles and was at the factory to see his new car being put together. Designed for practical everyday use, the car can travel at up to 160 kilometres per hour with a range as far as 440 kilometres. For the Clarity's release in California, Honda received 50,000 applications, but only considered people living near hydrogen fuel stations.
The drive was fantastic. It's great acceleration, great handling, and great comfort.
Limiting factors for the car are price and the scarcity of hydrogen supply. The FXC Clarity is part of Honda's aim to keep pace with rivals in green technology. It also plans to launch a petrol-electric hybrid-only model, as well as hybrid versions of the Civic, the CR-Z and the Fit subcompact. Doctors in Australia are giving patients with liver disease an alternative to hospital, needles and surgery. New equipment is allowing them to use a non-invasive scan to examine the liver, which means less discomfort for patients. Jan Hott contracted hepatitis C 30 years ago from a blood transfusion. So far, she's avoided exploratory surgery.
Probably had the Hep C made me ill, that would have pushed me into that, having to do that. It hasn't, and I'm really not very keen on having invasive surgery done like that.
An ultrasound scan using high-frequency sound transmitted through the skin delivers a picture of the inside of the body. Doctors can view the readings on a screen, providing quicker results than laboratory tests from liver samples. Another advantage of the new technology is that it allows doctors to view a much larger area.
By measuring the speed of that wave through the liver, we can determine how much scarring is in that person's liver. So, and the process takes probably about between 5 and 10 minutes.
The ultrasound scans can reveal scarring of the liver tissue.
You're looking at probably 200 times more of the liver than you do with the liver biopsy. So there may be arguments that this is a better way of looking at the liver than a liver biopsy when you're looking at scarring.
Hepatitis C affects around 170 million people worldwide. Unlike the A and B strains, there is no vaccine available to prevent hepatitis C, and there is a link between hepatitis and liver cancer. A new treatment was available when cancer spread to Linda Campbell's liver.
They told me there were so many that they couldn't count them.
At the University of Maryland Medical Center in the United States, her doctors suggested testing a new, radically different type of chemotherapy, introduced directly to the liver.
When you can increase the dose of chemotherapy into a region of the body where there are tumors present, you're going to get increased effectiveness.
By targeting just the cancer site, they flooded her liver with 10 times the dose of a standard chemo drug. To prevent the drug spreading to the rest of the body, the blood, now loaded with chemo, is captured as it leaves the liver. It's passed through an external filter to remove the chemo, and the blood is then safely put back into the body. Early indications are that Linda's tumours are now starting to respond, and with the treatment so focused, there are few side effects. After 4 monthly treatments, images show liver tumours shrank in 50% of patients. Linda does not know if or when her cancer will start growing again.
I'm not ready to die, and I figured if this can prolong my life, you know, for even a couple years, I'm willing to take it.
Her doctors are very positive.